Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here, and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today I'm taking a look at this, the Heller P-40 Kittyhawk in 1/72 scale. So join me as I get this down onto the workbench and see what this one is like. So as a fun fact, I've not actually looked at any Heller products that have come in their yellow boxings. I did build a number of Heller kits in my youth, and I have built some vintage Heller kits since then, but nothing really that's been manufactured in the last 20 years, so this will be an interesting experience for me. And I thought I'd start off with the P40 as it is one of my favourite types to model. So starting off on the front then, you can see we've got this image of the P40 and we have some dimensions and things. Over here it tells us it is 1/72 scale, there are 43 parts included, we have some dimensions and that there are 3 decal schemes included. You can see that I've got a sticker on here that indicates that this does actually come with paints and glue included, so this is technically their version of a starter set, but as we go through, we'll see that it's not really a starter set. It's just like extra. It's almost like a gift set, but they call it a starter kit. On this side here, we've got some sort of health and safety information in different languages. And if we flip over to the other edge, we can see the different paint schemes that are included. So we have 3. We've got a Royal Australian Air Force version, another Royal Australian Air Force version, and a United States Army Air Force version as well. I think these are fairly sort of famous versions of the P40. It seems to be most manufacturers will have a paint scheme replicating one or more of these at some point in their range. Onto the thin edges, there's the same as we've seen previously, so nothing new to note there, although we do seem to have an item code here of 56266. And if we turn over to the back, there is more information in different languages. We do have this safety sticker, which has been put over the top of the English language ones. This would give us historical information, but unfortunately the English one has been covered up by the warning label for the glue that is contained within the box. Moving on down the page, we can see that we've got some Heller and Revell paint colours listed here. The Heller paint colours are the same as the Humbrol paint colours because they had a sort of relationship in the past, so they just stuck with the same colour call-outs. And then over on the right hand side we have an image of what the decals are going to look like, so you can sort of see how many there are in the box, and then we have some more bits and pieces. What I do like about this boxing is that it tells you the tooling date, which is fantastic to see. So this is a 1972 tooling, and the molds were sort of revamped and looked after, probably polished in 2023. So this is an older tooling, and my expectations are now managed, that I'm going to be expecting slightly crude details, maybe a bit of flash, raised rivets, for example. You can see that we have a sticker here which indicates that this is made of recycled material, and this sealed the box. Obviously I've had the box open because I'm like a kid and I can't help myself, but they have placed that over some of the paint colors. So if you were in the shop, you'd have to peel the sticker away in order to figure out what paints you needed, so that's not very helpful. There are also some tabs on the side here which have been cut so that I can get into the box, and the box is a flappy top, which people quite like to see. I'm not too fussed, but it does keep things neat and tidy without having lids and things all over the place. So let's have a look at what we've got inside here. The first thing we've got is an aviation booklet, and this is just an example of it's just marketing. There's just other kits that you can get, so definitely worth a read if you're into it, and you can see the different kits that Heller have in their range. We are then met with what looks to be a health and safety sheet in different languages, so again, read that if you're particularly worried, but they probably have to include that. And now you can see everything here is pretty much loose in the box, which I'm not a fan of. I did go for the starter set version because it was only slightly more than the normal version, and you do get some extra bits and pieces. So let's look at those first. You can see we've got a tube of Humbrol polycement. I guess Heller don't make their own branded version, so they've gone with this. Slightly annoying that it is loose in the box. Typically other manufacturers will put things like this in a bag so that if there is any spillage, then it will hopefully not ruin the rest of the model. In this case though, there's no barrier, so it does run the risk of it damaging something inside of the box. Granted, of course, if this was in a plastic bag, it would eat through the plastic bag eventually, but at least it gives you a little bit more sort of confidence. Whereas here, it's just loose to roll around and potentially get damaged. You can see it's got dents and things in it already. So yeah, poly cement, and I can't unscrew it. Okay, yes I can. That seems to be usable. So if you wanted to use that, but you obviously could use your own. And then we also have some paints. Get the paints out. There should be a brush, I imagine. Yep, there's a brush there. So we'll have a look at that as well. So the brush is a size 3. Looks okay, but it is a little bit tatty. We've got some stray strands, stray bristles pointing in different directions. So again, because it's loose in the box, there probably was a little plastic tube over the top to protect it, but that's come off because it's been rolling around. But a size 3, that's pretty big. You're not going to be able to do fine details with this. You're going to be looking at just general large or larger areas. I think the brush will be fine, but it's not ideal for a starter set, I don't think. And then we have 3 paints. So we have Heller 110, which is a natural wood colour, and they come in these little pots, which is really nice. And yeah, they're usable. They're usable straight out of the pot. There's quite a lot of paint in there actually, so you can get quite how many mils is it? Does it say 12 mil? So that's not a bad size. That's almost like a full size bottle. The next one is a black, so this is number 33, and again this one is usable as well, but it will need a little bit of mix, but yeah, it's good to go. And then we have a number 30, which is a dark green, and again that one is usable in the bottle. So those are good. I like that. I like the design of the pot. 3 paints though. So as a starter set, what I would be expecting to see are enough paints in the set to paint it to a basic standard, which I don't think you can. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll get into the rest of the bits and pieces. We'll look at the parts last. So what we will look at first, oh, hello. The decals are sort of wedged in at the bottom, and they are just slightly bigger than the box, ever so slightly. So you can see that there is a slight bend to them. It's not massively an issue, but I imagine if this decal sheet was any bigger, they would be crumpled in the box. So that's not great, is it? They could have just trimmed it off a little bit around the edges and it would have fit a little bit better. So we've got the decals here. You can see the decals look to be printed to a reasonable quality. They don't appear to be like cartograph or anything. They seem to be sort of their own in-house, perhaps, printing. The decal film around the outside is quite large. There's quite a lot of decal film around the outside. They do feel a little bit thick as well, perhaps a little papery. The decal film is so large actually that some of them are actually touching each other and they're going to need cutting, like here where it says number 42. It's touching the stars, so you'd have to cut that in order to apply these. I think they'll go on okay. Registration, so that's where everything like matches up, seems to be all right. It seems to be printed to a pretty nice quality, but they are a little bit thick. These are giving which brand is this? This is like PM model sort of thickness. PM models are a bit like this, so you might have to trim some of it away. The nice thing is that we have some seat belts included, but the printing isn't particularly legible. So if you look here, we've got our small stencils and things, but they're just like blobs. They're not printed to the best of qualities. They look usable, don't they? They look like they'll be usable, but I have seen better from other manufacturers. But yeah, you get 3 decal schemes included, so I think they'll be all right. Let's put them back in the box. They don't fit that way, they fit that way. Instructions then. Let's have a look at the instructions. So the instructions are a big fold out sheet. Right. It's an A3 piece of paper. That's what it is. It's an A3 piece of paper. It's printed in color, which I like to see. We have a bit of a key to symbols up here. Then we have some information about the aircraft, which would have been on the box as well. And we have our 3 different paint schemes, A, B, and C. So as you go through, make sure you check that you're painting the right one or using the right parts or whatever. So we start off by the looks of it of doing our prop. and then we do our internal cockpit details, which there appear to be some, but not a great deal, and then we glue that all together. Apart from the propeller, if you do it correctly, you should have a freely rotating prop. If we move on, we can see we install the wings, we add our glazing for our cockpit canopy, add the fuselage, and then underneath we do have a drop tank, which I presume is optional. You don't have to include it, but I imagine that these holes are sort of mandatory. No indication of a display stand that I can see, no indication of a pilot figure either. Landing gear gets installed here, but there's no indication that the landing gear can be glued in the raised position, which is a bit disappointing. I imagine you could, but you'd have to do modification. So potentially it may not work as well as you might like. And then coming down, we have our stencil placement instructions, and then flipping over, we have our painting instructions, which are printed in full color, and I've got them upside down. So we have our 3 paint schemes here, one which is sort of an olive green and a grey underneath. Then we have a desert sort of brown, or more like a dark brown, and a green, and then a grey, and again for the third one. So with that in mind, what paints have we got? We had a paint number 110, which I imagine is the brown colour for this. So 110, yep, they're indicating the brown for the camouflage scheme. So that's good. We've got one we can use. We also had a 30, which is our green. And the 30 is for the camouflage scheme here as well. This one wants us to use 102, which I presume is an olive drab. But that's not been included in the kit. So if you wanted to do this one, you would at the very least have to get 102. And the last paint we got was a black. Well, you can paint your propeller and your wheels with that, but you can't do anything else. So unfortunately, in the sense of a starter set, we only have 2 paints which replicate any of the paint schemes. We can only do the brown and the green. We don't have a lower surface color, so you probably could leave it in the bare plastic, which is what I did in my very first build I ever did. But yeah, it's disappointing. You can't replicate this one at all because you don't have the right colors, and you can replicate these, but only the upper surfaces. So that, in my opinion, is not great. It's not great. Perhaps maybe this wasn't the best choice for a starter kit because you are going to have to go out and get more paint. You don't have the minimum that you need in order to replicate at least one paint scheme correctly. Like the blue spinner, not so much of a problem. The white bit on there, maybe the yellow you could forego, but you haven't been given enough, and that's disappointing. Especially if you're a beginner and you bought this thinking, oh, starter set, it has everything that I need. Well, unfortunately, no, it doesn't. On a positive note though, printed in full colour, which is great to see, and the instructions aren't overly complicated. So that's nice. Instructions are okay. Disappointing that we don't have enough paint to complete the model to any basic standard. And then we're on to the plastic parts. So we have 1 sprue moulded in a light grey plastic, a second sort of stick, and a third sort of stick of plastic parts. We also have some clear parts which come in a plastic bag. So let's get that open. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 plastic clear parts. The moulding is generally okay. There are some little scuffs and things in a few places. But I think when they say that they have tidied up the tools, I think they have done a reasonable job of it. So these don't look too terrible. Flash is quite low. There's not a lot in the way of flash. And yeah, the moulding's pretty good. The raised canopy lines are reasonably substantial. So if you were going to mask this, it wouldn't be too difficult to do by hand. Just a little bit of cleaning up in a few places. So yeah, these don't look too bad. They look okay. And then on to the plastic sprues, or the plastic parts. So let's have a look at this one. This has the majority of our parts, and you can see that we have some recessed details in a few places, but primarily because of the age of the tooling, we have raised rivets and things, raised panel lines. The moulding is reasonably crisp, but there is a little bit of flash and a few little marks and dents in a few places. Ejector pin marks are present. They are primarily on this side, but this has got visible surfaces. So like this is your cockpit floor, so there are going to be some ejector pin marks, but a little bit of flash on there. There is a slight mould seam down some of the parts as well, which may need tidying up. Plastic feels reasonably dense, maybe a little soft, but not too bad. And it's not greasy. It doesn't have a particularly greasy feel to it, not like other manufacturers. It looks, quality-wise, moderately okay. I would say this is buildable. We have got some sink marks here. The detail on the control panel is reasonable. It's not terrible. For a 1970s kit, it doesn't look terrible. My expectations were managed. Onto the wing surfaces, again, it's the same kind of deal. We've got raised panel lines. The details are reasonably quite nicely represented. We have a little bit of flash in a few places and a mold sort of line around the edge, which may need a little bit of cleaning up, but the detail level is acceptable. On the other side, you can see that this is a fairly old tooling because we have molded on numbers. It does look like it might need a little bit of work to put it together, and we do have some discoloration over here. Perhaps a little bit of dirt was in the tooling, but that won't be seen during the build. It does have a little bit of flex in it. It's not too bad. I haven't actually built one of these in my time modelling, so it'll be interesting to see what it's like. On to the final parts then, we have our fuselage halves. There's no cockpit detail moulded on the inside surfaces, but I doubt you'll be able to see a great deal through the windows anyway. It does say this is a Heller tooling here. I didn't see any dates, but we know it's a 70s tooling from what they said on the box. A little bit of flash again, which may need cleaning up, but the detail level is reasonable, but again, of the raised variety. Yeah, it doesn't look terrible. It looks like it'll be buildable. It looks like it'll give a reasonable representation of the P-40. Naturally, given its age, there are going to be better examples out there. But this is a cheap kit, and we'll talk about the price shortly. So let's remind ourselves, what did we have? We had 1, 2, 3 sort of grey plastic sprues of a moderate quality, fairly simple looking, maybe a little bit of work needed to raise the standard a little bit, but generally not too bad. We had 1 set of clear parts as well, which are again to a reasonable quality and shouldn't detract from the build in any way. 1 set of decals, which are a little bit thick. Printing is generally okay, but it could be more refined in places. We had a set of instructions which are printed in full colour, which is fantastic. They're not overly cluttered and they look to be fairly easy and simple to follow. Safety warning sheets and a little brochure. As this was the starter set variant, we did also have a rather large brush, probably too large for any fine detail, but fairly good for large surfaces. We had 1 tube of Humbrol polycement, which will do the job. And we had 3 paints, but as I mentioned, you only really have 2 paints that you will be able to use to replicate any aspect of the paint scheme for 2 of the paint schemes. 1 of the paint schemes you can't replicate at all, and you don't have any lower surface colours. And then we had a black, which will be good for your propeller blades and your wheels. But again, as a starter set, no, this isn't really working for me. On the plus side though, we've got a reasonably nice quality box, and I quite like the image on the front there. So yeah, positives. 3 paint schemes included, which I like because you've got a nice choice. The parts look to be molded to a moderate quality, and the decals, although they could be better, they look to be usable. Things that I think could be better about this kit is an inclusion of a pilot, perhaps a display stand, and also having a wheels up option, because I think to do wheels up, you're going to have to do modification. But as I mentioned, this is a cheap kit. So at the time I was making this video and what I got this for, Heller actually had this for a slightly reduced price of €8.99. So if we convert that to GBP, that's about £7.80 at the time I'm making the video. So an absolute bargain kit, considering we had paints and things included. That was the discounted price though. and typically the RRP is a little bit more at €9.99. But the reason why I went for this one is because the price difference between the paint being included and there being no paint included was about €1. So I thought for the sake of an extra euro, we might as well get some free paint and stuff because we want to see what it's like. So with that in mind, a cheap kit with a few additional extras, but I think given the fact that it's such an old tooling, it evens out. So in my personal opinion, I think that the price I paid for this with the discount is completely acceptable, but I do have my reservations about it, and I don't think that it is an ideal starter set. I think that perhaps had Heller gone down the route of other manufacturers and done a bespoke starter set with maybe one paint scheme which they can replicate fully, might have been a better option, because you want to have a successful experience if this was your first kit. I know if this was my first kit, I'd be disappointed because I don't have enough paint to complete the kit in any of the indicated paint schemes. And with that, I think I'm going to wrap this one up here. Let me know down in the comments what you think of my review and if my assessment of this kit was fair. As always, a quick shout out to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. A massive thanks to these guys on screen, and if you'd like to join them, check out the links in the description. There are other ways to help support the channel as well, and again, full details are below the video. The best way to support the channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.